every single kid in Michigan, regardless of where they live, gets access to a world-class education. Protect our Great Lakes and great outdoors again, and get a government that puts people first, looks beyond the balance sheets and the narrow ideological agendas, and works for the people and creates an economy that gives every single person the opportunity to succeed. That's what this election is about. And I also know, having served in the seat before, how important it is to have a strong partner and leader in Washington. And Hillary Clinton is that partner. And serving the people of this country, and she is going to make an excellent President of the United States. From focusing on restoring American manufacturing, investing in clean energy, strengthening our middle class, and unlocking American innovation to create a brighter future for our kids and our grandkids, we know that this is the woman to lead us in this time. And we also know that very rarely, if ever, in the history of this country, has anybody been so uniquely qualified to take on a position. As a child advocate, as an attorney, as a United States Senator, as Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton walks in with more experience and expertise on day one than many folks who have held that office walk out at the end of it. She prepares, and we know this, she prepares for everything. And she's so prepared for this that her daughter's actually held the position of first daughter before. I think that's real. But we also know this is a unique election in her opponent, because I don't think ever before in the history of our country has somebody been running for the position, nominated by one of our major parties, who is as unique a threat to the idea of America and the office of the president as Donald Trump. We can't let that happen. We cannot let that happen. Because we as a country are better than that, because we as a country know that we're stronger together.
That's right.
You know, I'm just a few years older than Chelsea, and I feel like in many ways, we just met for the first time a couple minutes ago, that we grew up together. That, you know, she handled being first daughter and living out her adolescence in the White House with, I think, unusual grace and dignity. And it was a role model. Thrill to be able to introduce her today. When I was asked, I was excited. They said, Chelsea Clinton's coming to Traverse City and you get to introduce her to Traverse City. And I thought, well great, I'll show her the State Theater and we'll go to State Theater. They said, no, you're not introducing her to Traverse City, you're introducing her in Traverse City. And you've got 3 minutes. But as we all know, it's an easy place to fall in love with. I expect that she'll be back. I hope she brings Mark and Aiden and Charlotte. But without further ado, join me in welcoming to Northern Michigan.
Here in Traverse City and across Michigan, we have more than 200 organizers working across the state. So will you just please give them a round of applause for all they do every day. And I want to recognize Amy Shamrow, the Traverse City Commissioner, who's with us, Johnson, who's running for the U.S. House, Betsy Copia, who's running also for the Michigan. She definitely represents section. I heard, just as I was about to come out, that there was a big debate watch party at the local theater. So I hope that you either were there or tuning in on Monday night. And you just saw once again why I'm so intensely proud to be my mother's daughter. Yeah. I will own up front that I am deeply biased towards her. I hope my children, who you just heard mentioned, Charlotte and Aiden, are as proud of me someday as I'm proud of my mom. And the reason that I'm here with all of you instead of at home with them is because this election is so intensely personal to me, because it is about their future. It is about their generation and about the world that I want them to be able to grow up in. And so I'm just going to talk to as many people as close as possible about what I think is at stake in this election. Because I do believe this is the most important presidential election of my lifetime. And I feel that way in part because I'm now a parent, and it's the first presidential election that I am participating in as a parent. I'm becoming a mom to Charlotte just over 2 years ago. She turned 2 on Monday. She may have heard of the debate. Oh yeah, thank you. Yes, Charlotte, please. Always, I appreciate cheers for my children. You know, I just couldn't imagine not doing everything I can to help elect the person who, as you heard Dan say, is uniquely qualified. Something that we heard from President Obama and my dad, and I think they know a little bit about the job. And I just couldn't imagine a better grandmother for my children. I also couldn't imagine a better president for their generation. And yet, even if I weren't a parent, and even if I louder. I will try to talk louder. I appreciate feedback. Really, so this can be as interactive as you want. I was just about to walk towards you and I realized I was about to go off the stage. I will try to speak louder while not falling off the stage. But on a serious note, oh, and the microphone just got louder too, so hopefully that helps. On a serious note, as I'm now booming into this beautiful hall, I think even if I weren't a parent, and even if I didn't have kind of the really blessed position to be my mother's daughter, I would think this was the most important presidential election of my lifetime. Because I worry everything that I care most about is at stake. And I think we saw the very clear contrast on Monday night between someone who is prepared, and I think we should expect people running for president to be prepared, and someone who can articulate what she wants to do for our economy, what she wants to do for our education system, what she wants to do to keep Americans safe here at home and to keep our country safe and secure around the world, and someone who couldn't do that. Because as my mom says, she does sweat the small stuff. Because when it's your job, or your child, or our future, that's not small. We're not statistics. It's our lives, it's our country, it's our future. So I am clearly deeply passionate about this campaign, and deeply proud of my mom. And I make no apology about that, because I have seen her work and fight and deliver my whole life. I have seen her work on early childhood education, something I didn't know could matter more to me until I became a parent. I've seen her work on healthcare reform, something I didn't know could matter anymore until I continued to meet young people, and now not so young people across the country who have health insurance because of the Children's Health Insurance Program that ensures more than 8 million children across our country. Where I met earlier this week some of our National Guardsmen and reservists who know they have health care in the VA, in part because of work that my mom did with Senator Lindsey Graham. When she was in the Senate, as I was watching a video from her oldest friend, a woman named Betsy Ebeling, kind of talk about that the campaign released today, she actually had quite a productive working relationship with Republicans on things like supporting our veterans and expanding early childhood education. I hope they remember that when, knock on wood, she's our president. so that we can continue to move forward together, because as I've realized my whole life, Stronger Together is not just a slogan for my mom. It is the motivating call of her life, where she truly believes that if we work together, we can ensure that every child, as she says, should have the chance to live up to his or her God-given potential. And so I'm so excited that there are so many people here today who are not yet old enough to vote, because they remind us that this election is about their future. And so, oh yeah, some of them are waving. And then there's just so much enthusiasm here. I really hope this can be a conversation, particularly since I think you can now hear me in the back. At least I hope you can. Oh gosh, thank you. I don't know you, but if I did, maybe I would love you too. And I certainly love being in a room of deeply motivated, deeply enthusiastic Americans who really know what's at stake in this election. But I would really just welcome the chance to answer specific questions, or if you have advice or suggestions for the campaign, I'm always open to hearing that as well for the next 39 days as we continue to work really hard here across Michigan up to Election Day, and certainly from now to October 11th, to help ensure that as many people are registered as possible so people can turn out and vote on Election Day. And if no hands go up, I will pick things to talk about, like debt-free college, or my mom's clean energy plan, or universal pre-kindergarten, but thankfully enough hands have already gone up, so maybe I'll get the chance to talk about those or other things altogether. Yes, ma'am, I saw your hand first.
Hi. Welcome to Northern Michigan. This is our home and we love it. I had the wonderful privilege of being a Hillary delegate at the National Convention.
Thank you.
Your speech was wonderful. But I've also been elected as the elector for the 1st District, and it'll be an honor and a privilege to cast my vote for Hillary Clinton for president.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. The unscientific, yes sir, in the front, in the bow tie, yes sir.
With all of the negative advertising that's out there, and that even the advertising to say that Donald Trump is doing things that we don't want the president to be doing, how can we make sure that your mom gets out the message of what she's going to do for the American people better than it's already gotten out?
Thank you for your question. I do think it's important that we continue to stand up to the negative rhetoric, partly because of the real consequences that we're already seeing from the kind of almost daily diet now of hate speech from the Republican candidate in his campaign. I mean, I never thought I would see in my lifetime the almost kind of normalization of racism and sexism and Islamophobia and homophobia and anti-immigrant rhetoric and rhetoric against Americans with disabilities and demeaning a Gold Star family in our country. I mean, none of this is who we are. And so I think the challenge is we do have to keep standing up to it, because when we say that our children are listening, that's not abstract. I had an experience that will haunt me forever in Pennsylvania a few weeks ago. My events are pretty much like this. I show up and I hope other people show up, and I speak a little bit, and then I really open the floor to questions or to whatever people may want to share with me about the campaign or about my mom. Because I hope if I'm responding to a specific question, I'm talking about something that at least one person cares about. And I was in Pennsylvania, and a woman came up to me after my event, and she said, "Can I share a story with you?" And I said, "Of course." And I noticed she hadn't raised her hand. She said, "I immigrated to the United States from Guatemala 12 years ago. I immigrated with my son, who at the time was 6 months old. We're both now American citizens. He just started middle school a couple weeks ago. And in less than 2 weeks, he's already been told 3 times to go back to Mexico,
or I hope that we build a wall so more people like you don't come here. So I think that the challenge is we have to stand up to the bully. And we have to continue to make it clear that that is not our country, that is not who we are, while also continuing to talk about what my mom does want to do, whether that's investing in jobs, or whether that is finally getting to free community college tuition, or whether that's ensuring the Affordable Care Act actually both increases insurance coverage and delivers on the affordable part of the Affordable Care Act. So we have to keep talking about the issues. My mom's in Florida today talking about what she wants to do to revolutionize national service in our country. I hope that gets coverage along with whatever else kind of the Republican candidate may be talking about today. So we just have to keep doing both. So I realize that might not be the easiest answer, but I think it's really the right answer. So thank you for your question. Oh gosh, so many hands now. The yes, sir, and the one.
First of all, I know what emotion. But second of all,
Thank
my question for you is, how do we motivate young people who for some reason have some issues with your mother, to get them out to understand what your mother really is all about? And how can we get them out to vote and to make it happen?
Thank you. So his question was, how do we help motivate young people? I get asked this a lot, and I get asked this a lot, I like to think, because I'm still young. Oh, thank you, thank you. I also get asked this a lot because there has been a lot of attention in the media to young voters, partly because millennials are now the largest potential voting bloc in our country. And I think if you just kind of listen to the media narrative during the primaries, you may have thought every young person was engaged in the process. But actually, we think only about 55% of 18 to 24-year-olds were registered to vote at the beginning of 2016. And in most primary or caucus contests, a majority of young people who were registered didn't show up to participate. So that says to me we have two challenges. One, we need to talk to everyone we know of every age, but particularly young people, about the importance of getting registered by October 11th here in Michigan. Because you may know young people who you think are registered who aren't. I mean, I've already outed him once, but I found out one of my brothers-in-law wasn't registered to vote. I can't out him again, so he can't be frustrated with me again. So it's worth just asking everyone that you know, are you registered to vote? And thankfully, it's not hard to register in Michigan. So hopefully, talking to people about registering so they can even have the option of showing up on November 8th. And I would say, in your conversations, talking about what's really at stake in this election. And the three things that I hear most from young people that they're focused on are college and higher education debt reform, criminal justice reform, and climate change. My mother's the only person who has real plans on those three issues. Certainly as you kind of heard from Donald Trump, not denying the debate convincingly because his tweets are still out there, that he has said that climate change is a hoax, right? So you can't address climate change if you don't recognize that it's real. And you can't see kind of clean energy as a real opportunity for job growth in our country if you don't recognize that climate change is real. And I've never heard him talk about the need for student loan reform. And last time I checked, that wasn't on his website. And we heard his sort of non-plan on criminal justice reform also in the debate. My mother's first policy speech in this campaign was on criminal justice reform. So I would hope that voters of any age, but particularly young voters, would A, register so they can be voters, and then B, look at what my mom is fighting for in this campaign and also what she's done throughout her life. Because I think that what someone has fought for, stood for, delivered on, is a pretty good indication of what they'll fight for, stand for, and deliver on as president. And I would pick her every day. So thank you. Yes, ma'am, difficult topic. Okay, maybe just shout and then I'll repeat your question.
Okay, it's about NAFTA. I want to know, like, we understand that it's a problem for some jobs, especially here in Michigan, but we still need to continue to trade with our neighboring countries. So what's the plan with having the renegotiation and what kind of treaties can we have with those countries that are so important for us for trade?
So her question was about trade, because she said she recognized that trade had, I'm going to paraphrase and then you can tell me if I've done an accurate job, okay, that she recognized that trade had not always been in the best interest of workers here in Michigan, but that she recognized that the United States wasn't the only country in the world and that we had to trade to help bring jobs to Michigan. Is that a fair? Okay, she's nodding, that was a fair synopsis. This came up in the debate, and again, it may be an old-fashioned view, but I think what someone has done is a pretty good indication of what they will do. And when she was a senator from New York, she voted both for and against trade agreements, whether or not they met, as she has said, her 3 standards. Did she think they were going to help create jobs, particularly in New York, when she was a senator from New York? Were they going to help raise wages in the jobs they were going to create? And were they going to help protect our national security? And so she has said that's the view that she would take in any potential trade negotiation or renegotiation in the future. So I would again just urge people to look at her record, because I think you can see her kind of following that framework in the time that she was in the Senate, which was the only time that she actually had the ability to express a formal view on trade agreements and what she both voted for and what she voted against. So again, I realize facts aren't always in vogue right now, and sort of someone's record is not always treated as predictive, but I do believe in facts, and I think kind of what someone has done is predictive. So yes.
Hillary has
I'll repeat his question too. Okay. Oh, was that it? Okay, so his question was, he knew that my mom had a plan for climate change, but he didn't feel like he'd heard enough about it. What's your name? Doug, and how old are you? You're 12. So I love, please give Doug a round of applause. I love how you asked this question, because the first issue that I really remember caring about when I was even a little younger than you was climate change. And I was really concerned more than 20 years ago about pollution. You can laugh at that, it's true. About pollution and about the fact that our Earth was already warming, and I just wanted to know what I could do. And my grandmother, my mother's mother, had moved to Arkansas with my grandfather when I was 7. And around that time, she said she was not going to give me Christmas presents any longer. She was going to give me memberships to organizations whose work I wanted to support and be part of. And so this went on for a few years, and thankfully I had a year membership to the World Wildlife Fund, and a year membership to Greenpeace, and a year membership to Conservation International. And I obsessively cut up the plastic rings around 6-pack cans of soda, because I learned that marine wildlife on the Gulf Coast were dying. I was horrified that in the middle of Arkansas I might be inadvertently killing a bird in Louisiana. And so it just, I feel such a sense of solidarity with you, because the fact that you asked this question just reminds me so much of me when I was your age. And I'm really proud of what my mom wants to do on climate change. I would also say, as an aside, I think this is an area where President Obama doesn't get enough credit. Because of the introduction of power plants, as well as his record now of being the president who's preserved the most land ever. So he's preserved more land than any president, including a great conservation president. So my mom wants us to do a few things. One, she thinks we have to protect what's called the Clean Power Pact, which is kind of what President Obama's executive actions are trying to do, and to close down kind of old, dirty, coal-fired power plants. 2, we have to make serious investments in renewable energy, including in coal countries, so that we're giving communities that helped build our country and our energy infrastructure in the 20th century to help us do that in the 21st century. And we also believe that, while yes, we need to invest billions of dollars in solar and geothermal and wind, and she thinks we need to set big goals, including having by the end of her first term more than 500 million more solar panels, particularly on our government buildings around the country. That we also need to think of our infrastructure as a place to help drive science forward, job creation, and fighting climate change. So how does that connect? Well, the Army Corps of Engineers says we have at least 1,000 bridges that will be somewhat structurally unsound by 2030. So that's before you're going to be my age, Doug. That's pretty scary if you think about it that way. So we know that we need to make massive investments in our infrastructure for public health and safety. And what an opportunity to develop what green, energy neutral, or even energy conserving concrete and cement and other materials will look like. So that's just a snapshot of what she wants to do. The last point I would make is I'm pretty sure my mom is maybe the only presidential candidate ever, but certainly in this race, to give a speech on environmental justice and the investments that we need to make, particularly in our inner cities, to help clean up our inner cities because of the deep inequity that currently exists for so many young people your age, Doug, who have asthma and other challenges because they're living in unsafe apartment buildings. So we have a lot of work to do to address climate change, but also, as she said in the debate on Monday night, ensure that we are the clean energy superpower of the 21st century, because someone's going to be, and it should be us. Yeah, so thank you. Oh my gosh, so many questions. Yes, the glasses. Oh, sorry, you can both ask a question because you both have glasses.
I'm an honorary member of a group of seniors that are here from the Cordia, and my mom's balcony overlooks this building. My mom 2 weeks ago went into hospice very bravely, and so she sat up and told her mom, there are no more options for you. And she said, well, that's only natural. We all got to go sometime. Then she looked at the doctor, and she said, I want to be around until Hillary is elected.
Miss O'Hare.
She was a lot like your mom. She was ahead of her time. She was a social worker. She joined the Peace Corps when she was 62. And my mom is proud of your mom. And they're just different places in the road and the continuum.
Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being here. Also in the glasses. Yes, ma'am.
So my daughter is 12 today, and she's here with me.
What's your daughter's name? Ava. We all wish Ava a happy birthday.
My question is, in another 6 to 7 years, she'll be going to college, and so I'd like to hear anything about the debt for college.
Thank you very much. So I am incredibly impressed. Her daughter's turning 12 today, which is why I asked you all to wish her happy birthday. And she's already thinking about college, and her mom wants to know what my mom is going to do so that she can go where she wants and do what she wants to do. I think this is one of the most important issues in this campaign, and I certainly hope that it comes up in the next debate in a very real way, because we now have more than 40 million Americans who have $1.2 trillion worth of student loan debt. And so my mom has proposed what she's calling a new college compact. I think that's a little bit of a misleading term because it actually includes graduate school as well. And I think that's an important part of the conversation because I don't know what Ava's going to do, but her dreams may not stop at the end of college. Yes, ma'am, I'm trying. I have to be careful not to shout because otherwise it reverberates. So I will try, and they clearly just turned the microphone up. I certainly am grateful that you want to hear me, so thank you for the feedback. And so talking about kind of my mom's plans for college and graduate school affordability, I want to talk first about what she wants to do for people who have debt today, and then what she wants to do to help avoid Ava and your family getting into debt. So for people who have college or graduate school debt today, she thinks that everyone who has a federal loan, that it should kind of drop to the lowest prevailing interest rate. Because the federal government should be in the business of making money off of student dreams and education. And that would probably help save more than 500,000 Michigan residents, at least a couple $1,000s. So that's real. The second thing that she wants to do is she thinks that everyone should be able to repay whatever loans they have today as a percentage of their income. So that no one should ever have to pay more than 10% of their income in loan repayment. And that third, something she's talking about today in Florida, or maybe she's already talked about it, I've kind of lost track of time these days, is using service, national service through AmeriCorps, but also using service of our police officers or firefighters, people who are willing to be nurses and doctors in high-need areas like on our Native American reservations, that service itself should count as loan repayment. We have a model for that in the VISTA program, so we know that works. And we should actually be valuing service. And finally, she thinks that people who want to start businesses or join startups really want to be part of helping create jobs in our country, should have a grace period before they have to repay their loans. So all of that's really important to my mom because of her own story. Her father had saved and could afford to pay for her to go to college, but she had to pay for herself to go to law school. And she paid for law school largely through loans. And when she was graduating from law school, Yale, where she had gone to law school, said to her, if you're going to take a job in the public interest, you can have a grace period before you repay your loan. But if you're going to take a job where you're earning money, we expect for you to repay your loan. But because they said that to her, she could go work for the Children's Defense Fund. And if they had said she had to start repaying her loan, she never could have taken the job that she wanted to take. And so this is hugely important to her because of her own story. Thinking about kind of people Ava's age and who are thinking about going to school either next year or in 6 or 7 years. My mom thinks that anyone should be able to go to community college tuition free. And she thinks that anyone who comes from a family making $125,000 or less should be able to go to a state college or university tuition free. And that anyone should be able to graduate debt-free if they're willing to work toward that end. She does, though, expect states to stop cutting funding for public colleges and universities. That's why it's called the College Compact. She doesn't expect states to immediately start investing in schools again, but she does at least expect states to stop cutting funds to help ensure that there is a partnership between the federal government that would be investing significant sums to finance this and state governments. And something that matters to me is that my mom tells you how she's going to pay for that. And I think that is also something that often gets lost in this election, because I think we should be told both what candidates want to do and how they're going to pay for something so that we can make up our minds. Do we think that this tax on the wealthiest 1%, or sometimes the wealthiest 4%, should go up to finance this program? I would argue yes. So I hope that you'll go online to my mom's college calculator. You can see exactly how her proposals would affect Ava if she were applying to go to school today. So yeah, thank you, and wish her a happy birthday one more time. Happy birthday! In the blue, there, yes.
racial discrimination that's happening in America.
So, what's your name? Sorry.
Thomas.
Oh, Thomas. So you could hear Thomas say his name, but you couldn't hear his question. It's a hugely important one. He said, what is my mom planning to do to help? I don't know what word he used. I think he used the word solve. I think it's also recover from a history of racial discrimination in our country. This came up a little bit in the debate. Often this conversation is far too narrowly defined through criminal justice reform. And criminal justice reform is certainly part of what we need to do to either restore, or for the first time, build bonds of trust between communities and the police who are protecting them, to ensure that young men of color, largely, aren't consistently on the wrong side of what are called 3 strikes laws and minimum sentencing laws. Because right now we have an epidemic of young men of color who are spending decades behind bars for non-violent offenses. But we also have a lot more to do. It's one of the reasons I brought up the environmental justice point earlier. We have to be investing more in communities that historically have been underinvested in, including Flint, where I was last week. And it is outrageous, this is now my personal opinion, it is outrageous that the continuing resolution was passed without funding for Flint. And I have tremendous respect for your Michigan delegation for standing consistently on the side of Flint, and Congressman Dan Quinn. We know we need to be investing more in what are known as Title I schools. So Title I schools are schools that have a disproportionately high percentage of students who qualify for free or reduced lunch. And that is the best kind of sense we have of levels of poverty in schools. There are a disproportionate number of Title I schools in largely minority areas, both largely African-American neighborhoods as well as Hispanic neighborhoods, and also on neighborhoods that are often adjacent to but not inside Native American reservations. And something that happened in the 1990s was that the federal government invested directly in Title I school districts and schools to help on a lot of infrastructure questions. And right now there are a lot of schools around our country, Thomas, where I wouldn't want you to go to school and I wouldn't want my children to go to school. And so ensuring the federal government can help get mold out of schools so that they're safer for kids to go to school, and literally sometimes repair crumbling walls, hopefully that enable school districts to invest more in teachers. That's also important because increasingly we're expecting our teachers to be all things to all people. So now thinking about Flint again, last year in Flint, in the whole Flint school district, there was 1 school nurse and 2 social workers. It's not unusual. And so we know we need to be doing more to support and empower and also protect all of our young people across our country, but particularly young people who historically have not been fought for and not been supported and not been protected and not been empowered. So your question is hugely important, and I hope that you will look at my mother's first speech that she gave in this campaign about criminal justice reform, but also look at her speeches on environmental justice and what she wants to do on public school investment and so much more, because we will have failed if we only reform the criminal justice system. Because while that is hugely important and we all have to wrestle with, particularly people who look like you and me, Thomas, with the implicit bias that exists in our country, that is insufficient. We have a lot of work we have to do. So thank you for your question. I'm so grateful that someone asked. Right, last question in the yellow shirt. I'm happy to be here.
As a veteran, one of the parts that scared me the most
thank you for your question. For those of you who couldn't hear her question, she stood up and she said, I'm a veteran, and she shared one of the moments that she found most troubling in the debate was when Donald Trump said that he would bomb the Iranian naval kind of officers and men who were taunting American naval officers and men. And my mother had said, well, you know, it's not the responsible response. We of course need to respond, but that would start a war. And he said, no, it wouldn't. And she was very worried, understandably, that he wouldn't understand the implications of what he had said. I think, given that's not uncharacteristic for often what he said throughout the campaign, helps explain why my mom stared straight into the camera and said to our allies, we will of course respect our alliances and of course respect our treaty obligations. And why she pointed out that the only time Article 5 of NATO has been activated and acted on was after September 11th, when every single one of our NATO allies came with us to stand up to the existential threat that Osama bin Laden represented, and to remind people of what alliances have meant in very real terms for our country and for Americans. You know, that we haven't had World War III, and that our allies have stood by us, and so yes, we will continue to stand by them. You also asked a question about kind of what else could my mom kind of say and do, and what can you say to your friends who are still in the military? And I would say again, kind of what someone has done hopefully will be looked at as something akin and predictive of what they will do. And so I mentioned earlier the work my mom did with Senator Graham to ensure that all of our National Guardsmen and women and all of our reservists who serve our country overseas can fully participate in the VA system when they get back. You know, I think that that should matter. I would hope that it would matter. I would hope that it would matter too that in her college compact, in her college and graduate school affordability plans, she has a specific section on veterans, because I think there is this misunderstanding for a lot of Americans that the GI Bill means that veterans can automatically go to school for free for whatever they want, and that's actually not true, as you understand, I'm sure, better than I do. And so just again, what she has done and what she hopes to do, because she believes that ensuring that we are taking care of and honoring our veteran service is one of the most solemn duties of a president. And that we should expect our president to think constantly about how to keep all Americans safe, including our men and women in uniform. So thank you for your service, and I'm sorry that we're out of time, and I'm sorry if you couldn't always hear me in the back, but thank you all so much for coming. Please make sure everyone